Let's go. Let's go. Strong medicine lesson number 4. Stress and threat response. I certainly know I would be having a bit of a stress response if I was across the octagon from Anderson the Spider Silva. As always, train your focus like chess grandmaster and 5-time world champion Magnus Carlsen. So, stress and threat response. The mind, the brain is a beautiful servant and a terrible master. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy. If you're overstressed, no matter how perfect your nutrition, training, sleep, etc., you will go catabolic and be subject to oxidative stress. More oxidative stress than you can handle. Our threat detection response is known as our fight or flight response. So it is very, very important to have control over our minds, to be aware of the factors that influence the state of mind we are in, because stress, real or imaginary, is real to the brain. We have to deal with that. So our ancestors had stressors such as predators, marauding bandits, competition for scarce resources, harsh winters, scarce food, and many more. In modern society, our stressors are less tangible, but they're still perceived as just as real by our brains. Because stressors are low level and constant, they actually do more damage than if you were just attacked by a bear every once in a while, provided you survived the bear attack. Because the bear, it's an acute stressor. The bear comes, you deal with the bear, you either kill the bear, you run away from the bear. You always kill the bear. What one man can do, another can do. I'm going to kill the bear. Say it. Great movie, The Edge. Watch it, about a dude who kills a bear. But it's more than that, but great movie. So kill the bear, always kill the bear. But chronic stress is a lot more deadly because we're always being subject to this low level oxidative stress. Whereas acute stress can have a hormetic effect. The acute stress, your body says, oh, whoa, the stressor kind of adapts to it and then calms down. Everything goes back to normal. We can go back to homeostasis. The chronic stress is it's just constant. So we never really, you adapt to it, but you just adapt to it by simply having a higher resting baseline of stress or oxidative stress, which is just bad. I mean, your stress cup is now just more full. We'll get in the stress cup next video, but your stress cup is now just chronically more full instead of having the bursts of stress expanding your stress cup in a hormetic way. So chronic stress, bad. Acute stress, maybe bad if it kills you, but if it doesn't kill you, it is a good thing because you will adapt and you will chill out afterward. Chronic stress is like this Dilbert comic. It's just like it just erodes at your sanity, it erodes at your being. Chronic stress has been linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, autoimmune disease, depression, chronic pain, cancer, and many more horrible things that you do not want. Humans are not equipped to deal with chronic stress. We're meant to encounter a stress or deal with it and then chill out and move on. Anything in the environment the brain perceives as a stress will trigger their stress response. When people have panic attacks is because they're perceiving symptoms of stress as a threat, just thus creating a loop. So when you have a panic attack, you get stressed out and then you pay attention to the stress signals within your own body. And you're like, oh no, these are the stress signals. Stress is bad for me. And you get stressed out because there's stress. And that it just keeps going until you literally like lie down on the ground because you think you're having a heart attack. But yeah, chronic stress rewires their brain to adopt a new level of elevated stress as the baseline. It is very bad. The two components of stress response in the autonomic nervous system, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, are the two components of the stress response of the autonomic nervous system and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis for short. The autonomic nervous system controls everything that we do not consciously control. This is breathing. Drinking seltzer is making me burp, but this is breathing, like thermoregulation, digestion, metabolism, arousal, all of these things, heart rate, I mean, you can bring these things under conscious control, which is very interesting, but the autonomic nervous system exists to regulate these things so that we don't have to be consciously in control of how our liver releases enzymes. That would be very, very inconvenient. I don't think I could consciously operate my liver. I don't know about any of you, but it's good we have an autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, which is a component of the autonomic nervous system, is the fight or flight part. The parasympathetic nervous system is the other part of the autonomic nervous system. There actually is a third component, the enteric nervous system, that governs our gut, but we'll go over that later. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest, or feed and breed. Parasympathetic nervous system is anti-inflammatory and calms us down. The sympathetic nervous system gets us amped up and ready to go. So, and when the SNS is active, the PNS is not active, PNS being peripheral nervous system, and vice versa. Stress, however low, stimulates the SNS. This is why chronic stress is bad, because our PNS is never active. We're never getting the anti-inflammatory relaxing effects of the peripheral nervous system, or parasympathetic nervous system, my bad. The parasympathetic nervous system, we're just constantly having low levels of oxidative stress from the sympathetic nervous system. So even though an acute stressor is much higher, when it ends, we then have the parasympathetic response. But a chronic stressor, basically the negative of that is that it's shutting off our parasympathetic response. So we never get that calm anti-inflammatory effect that we need to be healthy and balanced. Ideally, these both need to be in balance. The HPA axis is composed of the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal cortex. The hypothalamus regulates sleep-wake cycle, hunger, thirst, thermoregulation, responsible for maintaining homeostasis, signals reproduction, starts the fight or flight response, and is also responsible for aspects of interpersonal bonding. And I believe it stores and releases oxytocin. Hypothalamus is not only responsible for the initial stress response, but also the delayed stress response through hormones in the HPA axis. So the initial stress response is you see a stressor and you release like norepinephrine, adrenaline, these sorts of chemicals that get you going, fight or flight immediately. The delayed stress response is cortisol based, and it actually helps calm us down after we have the quick stress response. If we don't have cortisol, we can actually develop PTSD. One of the ways that they help people who are in very, very stressful situations, they actually give them cortisol afterward. And having a lot of cortisol after a stressful situation, provided that it ended and the cortisol gets to dissipate, is good and actually prevents PTSD and prevents a lot of the negative effects of the quick stress response. The next part of the HPA axis is the pituitary gland. It receives chemical signals from the hypothalamus. It's located directly beneath the hypothalamus, as you can see in this diagram. It's the master gland of the endocrine system, responsible for release of pretty much all hormones in the body from other glands, regulates water retention, electrolyte balance, responsible for physical growth of all kinds, regulates metabolism, and it responds to stress and trauma, which are basically the same. The adrenal glands are the last part of the chain that is the HPA axis. And they sit on top of your kidneys. The adrenals secrete hormones in response to stress. Cortisol fuels the slow stress response of the adrenal glands. Epinephrine and norepinephrine fuel this fast stress response. Cortisol helps you recover after the threat is passed, and chronic high levels of cortisol lead to fat gain and many other conditions. You also get adrenal fatigue, where the adrenal glands become depleted of the resources they need to create stress, and it's just very, very bad. So the threat response, when it is healthy, calms down. When it is unhealthy, though, you can end up in this loop where the threat response triggers inflammation, oxidative stress. Those then are perceived as a threat, which then keeps this loop going. This loop causes swollen fat cells. Swollen fat cells are a trigger, but it also causes that too. Again, a loop. Excessive exercise, processed foods, internal threats created by poor health trigger the stress response. Many unhealthy individuals just creates a loop that is very hard to pull out of, as I said.